Okay, here is a worksheet that was posted on Twitter a few days ago, and it generated some interesting discussion as to whether it was a good activity, a good phonics activity for Year 1 children. That's children who are 5 turning 6 in the academic year. So they're quite young, but they will have had some considerable phonics input by that point, or at least we're speaking in normal times, not COVID. Okay, so let's have a look at this activity and see why it was controversial. Okay, so I know that it's supposed to be a phonics activity because here we have a mention to phase 5 and also to real and nonsense words. And so phase 5 likely refers to phase 5 of letters and sounds, which was a sort of phonics program stroke framework that was published for free by the UK government a few years back. To give teachers the idea of the scope and sequence of a good phonics program. The letters and sounds did need you to, infill with worksheets and other resources, which is where a worksheet like this might have come in, I suppose. But, it was a really decent starting point. Okay, but you probably needed, some good training in order to know how to develop the resources that fit in. Okay, so that's phase 5, and then real and nonsense words. Now, my antennae go up when I see nonsense words. Again, that indicates the attempt at a phonics activity. Spoiler alert, perhaps hidden there. I don't think it's a very good one. But nonsense words became sort of flavour of the month or the last few years after the introduction of the phonics screening check, which does use what I would call pseudo words, and some people call nonsense words, as a diagnostic tool. I'll talk about that later, and why also, spoiler alert, something like this bears no relation to the activity in the phonics screening check. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm afraid I don't have the side of the worksheet here, but we can still ascertain the meaning, I think. So there are many different words spelt with IE. Okay, well, now we're talking about the spelling. It says spelt, and it doesn't use the forward slashes to talk about a sound. So we're talking about the spelling IE. Can you spot which words are real and which are nonsense below? Fill in your key with a different colour, I presume, for real words and nonsense words, and then colour in the correct boxes. Okay, so right, so we've got. So presumably the child has to read through all these words and determine whether they are real or nonsense words and colour code them accordingly. So, right, I've already got my pen. Let's have a look. Okay, so what do I, as a competent adult reader, think? So here we have not a pencil working. So we have cried, replied, die, lie, tried, tied, tie, fried, spied, and pie. Okay, so as a competent adult reader, that's what I think. I think those are the real words. Now, emphasis on think here. I haven't gotten to search any of these words or look them up in the extended Oxford English Dictionary, so I wouldn't put any money on it, but these words simply could be words that are not in my vocabulary. They could be archaic words. I don't know. But that's my best guess, I suppose, in this circumstance. I would be assuming that the person that wrote this worksheet had done their homework. I don't know. But what have I noticed? So let's do the colour coding. So what have I noticed? I have noticed that in each of these words, the IE represents the I sound. Okay, only one sound is represented here. Okay, and that is this. I would write it like this: the I right? The two slashes, the two forward slashes denote that I'm speaking about the sound and not the spelling. Okay, I generally use IGH for this because IGH most consistently represents the I sound. Okay, but the I spelling, okay, the I spelling can represent different sounds. All right, so we also have, what about this one as an alternative sound? So have a look at this. We've got chief, we've got field. Okay, in these words we have, I don't know if you can see that up on your screen. So the IE in these two words represent the E sound, which is quite different, but not uncommon. Okay, so we have to bear in mind what we want children to do. So, and we have to bear in mind when we're designing resources that not only do they teach what we're hoping to teach them in the moment, but that they don't inadvertently teach something that could be problematic later. Okay. Now, when a child, English is complicated. Okay, that's why we spend so much time and energy on it, and why we spend so much time and energy discussing how to teach it. But it is complicated. And what we expect a child to be able to do when they're reading is to be flexible and to be able to cope with this variation. Okay, so imagine if they know the word cow. Okay, and they know that this spelling, here we go, cow, this spelling in this word represents the ow sound. Okay, now imagine then that they come across this word. Same spelling, okay, but it represents a different sound here. Now, it might be that they've read cow, they also know now. Okay, so when they see this spelling, this is the ow sound is the sound that they think of first. So they look at this word and they first think blow. That doesn't work. But hopefully they know that, if it's not ow, it might be O, which is another sound that I know that this spelling represents, and then get blow. Okay, we need the children to have that sort of flexibility, and to not think that when they come across this and they say blow, that that must be a nonsense word then. Here we have a nonsense word because it doesn't work with the first sound that I've tried. Okay, so we need to be careful that that's what we're teaching them. We also need to be aware that they do not have, the children will vary considerably in the vocabulary that they have. So as I said, I couldn't guarantee that all of these words that I've left out here, I have, some of them, one of them could well be a valid English word. I don't know for sure. And the children will not. And we do not want to teach them that words that they cannot read are nonsense words. Reading is one of the most important ways for children to acquire new vocabulary. It might be vocabulary that that they might have in their oral vocabulary and they haven't seen in print before, but they also could be completely novel words. Children's books are incredibly rich. They are much richer in vocabulary than the sort of language that they hear even in school on a daily basis. Okay, so books are terribly important. So we have to be really careful of what we're teaching them. So let's have a look. So why this has come about? Why are people talking about nonsense words? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. Now this, I don't want to, actually what I'll do is, there we go. So this is an example from the phonics screening check that I referenced earlier. Now, and this is an example of how pseudo words are presented to the children. They're not told that they are nonsense words that have no meaning, and they're not supposed to identify whether a word, has any meaning or not. These words are presented to the children as the names of alien creatures. Okay, so this is a jolly nice alien, and this is his name. And the child is asked to read the name of the alien. So this is not a nonsense word to the child. This word has meaning, the same meaning as any other name. Okay, so here we have ot, vap, osk, and ect. Okay, all of these words have meaning. They're not nonsense to the child, and they're not being asked to identify whether a word is nonsense or not. Okay, so if we go back to this one here, I've lost my markings, but I think we're past that now. I would never I don't see why you need to use nonsense words certainly in a whole class scenario. English has so many words in it that you can use, and you can be introducing new vocabulary to them. I might use nonsense words as part of a diagnostic, or I might use nonsense words when I'm working with a child who is really bad for guessing. Okay, they're inveterate guessers who always like to use meaning or just a clue from the first sound, from the first letter or two, and they try to guess the rest of the word. If I tell them that all of the words are going to be made up and words that they can't guess, then they will have to pay attention to the letters and to try and decode according to their knowledge. So I might use nonsense words then, but that's a one-to-one activity, and I certainly not an activity on a worksheet unsupervised by someone who understands the worksheet. And again, they're used as the phonics screening check used them as a diagnostic, again, in order to get around the fact that there is a huge amount of variation in the vocabulary knowledge of children. You have children in your class, some of them might have huge vocabularies, some of them might barely be English speakers. They could, English could be their third, fourth, fifth language, who knows? So we do need to make the check as fair as possible, a fair check of their phonics skills. Okay. I hope that wasn't too long-winded. I hope that explains why I think this is a terrible exercise and why it ought to be torn up into lots of little pieces, or maybe turned over for your child to draw on and make a new activity instead.